Folks, this week on the Prereal Podcast, we have Pete Reese. He's the president of Reelvest Properties. He's got a focus on the land business, something you've heard me talking about quite a bit over the last few years, something that we've pursued and we've had some success with. Pete's doing it in an unbelievable way. He's scaling to the tune of like $1 million to $3 million to $10 million over just a few short years. He takes you through the ins and the outs and how he's doing it and opportunities and ways to get involved. If you're interested in learning about the land speculation business, give this one a listen. It's a good one. Thanks, guys.
Are you ready to bring your real estate game to the next level? My name is James Prendamano. I'm the CEO and founder of Prereal. And over the past 25 years, I've closed over $1 billion in transactional real estate. Each week, I'm meeting with outstanding investors, high-performing individuals, and visionaries operating in the real estate space. These are the people that are actually out there in the real estate game right now getting it done. This podcast aims at bringing anyone's game to the next level. This is the Prereal Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the Prereal Podcast. We're joined today by Pete Reese. He's the president of Reelvest Properties. And doing my homework, I felt like Pete's kind of my brother from another mother. We have very similar backgrounds and similar interests, and we're on a similar trajectory. So with that, Pete, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure to talk to someone that has kind of come up and gone through the ranks in the business. You're a real estate broker out in California since early 2000s. You became an active investor in real estate, actually, even before that, I believe, since 2000. And you've run the gamut here, right? You've done a lot of different transactional real estate, thousands of deals. Why don't you talk a little bit about the onset of that journey and just bring the audience up to speed briefly on how you got where you are. And then I'm super excited to dive into the model that you've deployed and you're scaling now, which is a focus on acquiring land. So let's just go back to the beginning and kind of a quick roll up, if you will.
Sure. Well, I started kind of my real estate investing journey in the early 2000s, and we were flipping homes actually before it was as hot as it is today. I mean, there were still a lot of people doing it. You know, there were shows on HGTV back then. They were just different ones. But
before Burr was a thing, right?
Before, like I'd never heard of Burr
this
back
long
then.
After. People were like, are you doing the Burr method? And what's the Burr method? And then you say, oh, is that what they call that today?
Yeah,
okay.
That's the name, I guess.
We do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were flipping homes back then. I say we, myself and my wife. And it was a great business until the market collapsed in 2007 to 2009. Previous to that, a year or two, I got my broker's license out here in California just because it gave me better access to the deals. I was buying on MLS properties, so I was able to offer myself and I was able to show myself properties. So that's why I got my license. And then when the market crashed, I was like, hey, flipping homes isn't really the best business to be in because the retail end buyers disappeared because they couldn't get financing. So I thought, well, foreclosures are selling, I'll just represent those for the banks. And I kind of did a major focus on that for a number of years. And I was an REO listing broker for the banks when the market crashed. It was good because I kept income coming in at the time, but not a great business by any means. Not something I'd like to revisit in any way. Tough emotional business, I think, in a lot of ways. But I was thankful to have that at that time. I got connected with some great people through that, though, some larger investment companies that were always looking for deals. So for a while there, I was just helping them source deals and finding them as many deals as I could get them, and they would buy as many as I could find. So that was great for a while. I got out of real estate kind of altogether for a little while in 2017-ish. Yeah, 2017, started a business with my wife, an online education business about blogging and travel blogging. That was really successful. Did that for a number of years, but I really got the itch to get back into real estate and specifically real estate investing. Didn't know exactly which path to take. I didn't really want to get into home flipping because there's a lot of logistics involved with that, dealing with contractors, and just a lot of moving pieces, a lot of unknowns. So I figured there was probably a better model out there. Just was looking for it. Stumbled upon some people talking about land flipping, and specifically stuff like, hey, I bought this property for 10,000. I sold it for 30,000 in, 60 days. And I thought to myself, well, that's pretty cool. Tripling your money in 60 days, and it's land. You don't have to fix it up or do anything to it. And just kind of went down a whole rabbit hole on that, bought a course on that. And I just went kind of all in. That was the end of 2020, which I bought a course on that. And then in 2021, March of 2021 is when we flipped or completed our first flip, land flip. And that first year ended up doing about 1.25 in revenue and about 50% gross profit margin too. So on average, we were able to pretty much double our money on each of these deals, and about 60 days hold time too, which was kind of cool, moving our money fast. And then 2022 ended up doing just shy of 3.5 million and a little bit shy of the 50% gross profit margin, but not that far off. And then 2023, I'm looking to do 10 million. So I'm well on my way. So.
Well, congrats on the success, man. It's and for those in the audience that are hearing these numbers, we see these ads and we see things come across our devices all the time about courses and ways to make money in real estate. I'm doing right now what Pete's doing. It's very real. This is absolutely a pathway, folks, that doesn't require nearly the amount of expertise you would think it requires on the way in. It's something that you can kind of study up on relatively quickly. There's a massive amount of inventory available out there. And if you find the right niche, there is wild profits that you can make here. So when you decided to kind of get back in, Pete, you having run such a wide array of deals and being involved in a number of different types of transactional real estate deals, what was it about land specifically? I know for me that there was you can't appreciate it. So that was a mark in the wrong section, but there was a lot of things about the land business that were attractive to me. What were some of the things that made it sexy for you that said, you know what, this is where I want to put my time, energy, and money?
Yeah, well, it just kind of makes sense to me. I've always prided myself on being able to identify value. I've always felt I'm good at that. So in this type of business, you make your money when you buy it. On the land business, you're not, we're doing some value add stuff, but a lot of times we're just buying it off market and then selling it on market. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an arbitrage situation in a way. But I feel like, but you got to be real confident because each piece of land is different, So I feel like I'm really good at identifying value and identifying, is this property actually worth what I think it's worth, that type of thing. So that really appealed to me, the buying and the selling thing. The short hold times really appealed to me. The fact that it was a cash business too, like I don't have to, you can do it. You could do some really good numbers, but you don't have to get financing for all these deals or anything like that, which I think is pretty cool as well. It just really kind of made sense to me. And also I like the fact that it seemed really scalable to me. Like all the business that we generate, all the leads that we generate are generated with direct mail. So, in my mind, it made sense that, okay, once I get this kind of system up and going, then I can just send out more and more mail and hopefully my business will scale more and more.
So are you buying in one location? Are you buying in one state? Are you buying in one section? Like, how far do you go?
Well, I want to get in as many markets as I can. We've done most of our business really has been on the East Coast, anywhere from like New York down to Florida. But I'm trying to expand into other markets, and we'll send out a lot of test mail into certain areas and see if we can gain a little traction, get a deal there, and kind of start building up our kind of team on the ground. And that's what's kind of important for me. I'm in California and I never go out and see any of these properties. So I rely on, getting some good people in the area that, agents and brokers, working with them to help us on the resale side of things. So I always sell with a agent or land agent or land broker. So it helps to get their opinion on the buy and that type of thing.
And are you selling cash or are you selling on terms?
We're selling cash.
Okay.
So yeah, so I know there's a number of different models that people do. You know, so there's other other investors that will, you know, buy a property, they'll take a down payment and sell it on terms and that way. But I'm always just liquidating and moving on to the next deal.
So when you're making the offers, right? You said something earlier, you make your money on the acquisition.
Right.
And what that means is you buy it right?
Right.
So how are you getting a sense of market here? You're not seeing the dirt yourself. You're doing this at scale, right? Entire coast, and now you want to spread out into the entire country. How are you determining values when you send the letters out?
Yeah, so we're basing when we're sending out these letters, which are they're blind offers as we call them. They're based off of what we do is we base them off of average values in a particular county generally. So I'll take a particular county and I'll look at the comps, the recent sold comps. Say we're mailing a list that's 10 acres plus just vacant land in a particular county. So I'll look at the comps and then I'll say, okay, retail price maybe is 10,000 an acre. And then we'll back off a certain percentage from there. And that becomes our offer price. Now, when the people respond, then we kind of get into the nitty gritty because in reality, each property is different. Each little, we could have 3 10-acre properties on the same street and they all have different values. And you can't really know that until you really look at each one. I mean, one might be all farmland, one might be all forest, one might be all swamp, or they may be some combination of those types of things, or one might be very sloped, one might have no road frontage. So there's lots of different variables, and you just can't accurately know that until you actually look at the property. So we base our offers on the averages for a particular area, and then we get into the details. Sometimes we're too high, sometimes we're too low. So it just depends. Some people will say, okay, I'll take the deal. And then we look at the property and we're like, yeah, I don't want to buy that property because it's a landlocked swamp, or something like that. And so, in those cases, we either renegotiate if it's a decent property that we want to buy, or we just pass on it altogether. But, and if we're too low and the people call and they say, hey, I want to sell, but I need this price, we take a look at it and see if we can come up to that price in order to make the deal happen.
So when you're checking comps, are you looking at like the MLS? Where are you pulling comps from?
Yeah, Zillow, Redfin. Yeah, public data. Yeah.
Okay, so Zillow, Redfin, the local MLS, you're pulling those comp sets, sending your letters out, and then engaging on the individual pieces. You said there's so many variables, so many factors that go into value. It really is amazing how much a property can, like you said, you could have 3 on the same block, and the owners never understand that, right? Like, well, they sold for this, so why am I not getting that? But there are a myriad of factors. So are you running title on these things? Like, how far are you taking it?
Yeah, so once we get a purchase agreement signed, like they sign it, we sign it, we're both in agreement, we're moving forward. It kicks off a whole due diligence process. I've got a team now that really helps me with that. But first thing we do is we order a photographer and a drone person to go out and actually walk the property, see if there's anything on the ground that would be kind of a red flag for us. We also, hopefully we've got a local agent, a land agent or broker that we're working with. We also kind of bring them in and kind of ask them their opinion at that point. And if we don't have one, we'll find someone to give us an opinion about that. And then we give them the listing when we go to resell it. But, and then, we have a whole checklist of different things that we do. We call the city, call the county, whoever the jurisdictions are, we call the utilities. We try to determine if it's a buildable property or not, or if there's any kind of red flags that pop up, asking all these general questions with them. And then we also buy everything through an attorney, title, escrow company as well. So when the title report comes back, then we see if there's any red flags on there or anything that would cause us to not want to move forward with the purchase. And it's happened sometimes, like I can recall one really recently where everything looked great, property inspection, everything looked good. And then we get the title report back and there was something filed in the 50s for a landfill, and apparently they were using this property as a landfill. They had dug up and buried a bunch of trash there, this local community, and covered it all up. You couldn't tell even on the ground. The seller didn't mention anything about that. But obviously that's not something that I want to deal with. So we just, we obviously didn't close on that deal, but sometimes things like that come up in title as well. And we just, so we try to do as much research as we can, before we actually close on the property. And it takes, the closing process normally takes about 30 days because it's the title generally that we're waiting for. These title searches are all backed up. So,
Yeah, I mean, but if you're running title, that certainly gives me peace of mind when we have the opportunity to run title. It usually catches the major bogeys. How are you finding people in these different locations to walk the property for you, and how are you imparting to them what it is that you want them to keep an eye for?
Yeah, well, so we, the areas that we've done a lot of business with, we've found pretty good people over time. But if we don't have someone in a particular area, we do a posting on, there's a site called droner.io. And basically they're drone pilots mostly, but many of them are very used to doing these type of inspections for land investors. So we have a whole write-up of specific instructions that we give them. But basically we want them to write up a little report talking about the property. We want them to actually walk the entire property. And, obviously drone photos and drone video and on the ground photos and video as well. It's a whole kind of checklist of stuff that we give them, but we've got a predetermined sheet that we give them. And so that really helps out. And, some of them are better than others. And when we find a really good one, we try to keep them busy over and over again.
Good stuff. So are you finding, because certainly I could say over the last 4 or 5 years, I'm noticing more and more people in the land business, where 10 years ago, I could count on one hand how many folks I knew that were doing the land speculation deal. There is a massive amount of inventory. So we haven't seen the competition really become an issue yet, but are you seeing that now? Has competition started to create, some wakes in the water, if you will?
Yeah, certain very hot areas. There's, we contact sellers and are like, oh, I'm tired of getting these letters from land investors or whatever. And, but I just kind of look at the numbers and cost per deal and everything like that. So the hot areas, obviously, when you get it may be a little harder to get a deal, but when you do get a deal, it's easier to sell. The areas that are not as hot, obviously easier to get a deal, but they maybe take a little bit longer to sell. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. I like a lot of the hot areas, just because when you do get a deal, it's pretty easy to sell. But so yeah, there's a little bit of competition out there, but I think that there's plenty of space for others, and I don't see it. It costs me about my mail costs. It costs me about $3,000 per deal on average, as far as mail goes, and I'm only buying like better property. I'm pretty picky on the properties I buy, and I'm only buying larger ones. I know if I were to just do kind of more infill lots, smaller lots and everything, I'd be able to get that cost down considerably. But my average profit per deal is about 22,000 on average between all of my deals. So, and I just look at kind of the aggregate numbers, it's costing me 3,000 in mail for each deal, and I'm making 22,000 on the deal, then there's a big return on investment. So I'm, even if that creeps up some, there's still room where it makes sense for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. We have found the most difficult thing to do, not just in the land business, in any facet of the business, is scale. That has been our absolute biggest challenge. You're talking about taking an operation here that is seeing explosive growth percentage-wise and really ratcheting this thing up. There's a host of challenges now as you start to push west. There's a lot of different rules. The land values are completely different. What are your what are your plans? What are your thoughts on some of these challenges you're going to see as you enter these new markets? I mean, finding new brokers, finding these new dependable people, valuing the property. Do you have a specific plan in place to kind of make this next jump?
Yeah, so we try to establish, like we send out that test mail that I was talking about. We try to get like a deal in a particular area, deal or two in a particular area. And then we try to work hard to find the best broker or agent to work with in that area. And at this point, it's actually probably easier for us than maybe a new company, because we've got a pretty established pitch. Like we try to make it as easy as possible on these brokers and agents that we're dealing with. We've got agents that we've done tons and tons of transactions with, so we can point to that and say, hey, we want this to be you. We want to do as many deals as we can in this area. I want to make it a win-win for you. So I try to look at it from their perspective and find the partners in that way. And believe me, when we find a really good land agent or partner, everything works so much better. So that's really the key there into breaking into new markets, because they educate us on the local things that are different from our other areas. So where we send them a property and they're like, well, have you looked into this? Have you looked into that? And we didn't. And then obviously it may be something we didn't know about. And we're like, tell us, like, what do we need to do? Like, what do we need to know about these type of properties and make it work? So the good ones will alert us to those type of things. They'll be able to refer us to title companies and other partners as well. And so that's kind of the key. And we're just kind of conservative as we're breaking into a new market too. We're only kind of cherry picking the best potential deals, and ones where we're sure we've got good comps. We feel really confident about that. After we've done some deals in a particular area, we can get a little bit more aggressive in those areas because we've got more information. We know how fast properties sell and what kind of activity we get. We know what the best areas are and things like that. So, we're able to get a little bit more aggressive as we gain a foothold in a particular area. But, when we're starting out, we're trying to get a foothold in an area, we've got to be pretty conservative.
So the banking crisis that we believe we're just seeing the start of now, certainly can wreak havoc on a real estate portfolio, in particular, the fix and flips and some of the larger scale stuff, right? This end of the business, I think, is a bit more insulated from that type of an impact. But if you're scaling and you're looking at taking revenue from 1 to 3 and 3 to 10, how is the cap stack rounding out? Are you planning to self-fund these acquisitions, or have you brought in partners? Is there any bank financing? What does the capital side look like?
Yeah, so I've done everything self-funding to this point. I've done a couple of large properties with the funding partner, meaning they brought the money to the deal, and then I split the profits with them when it resold. So it was kind of one of the properties was 315,000. We sold it for 590. So it was a good deal for both of us. I brought the deal, they brought the money, and then we split the profits. Another one I've got going on it's just like that. We haven't sold it yet, but we're getting some traction. That one was 360, and we'll probably end up selling it in the 600 somewhere. So I think that those types of deals are good, but everything else I've done myself, self-funding it myself. The interesting thing is that in this business, just like it accelerates. And it's not just the revenue that we're doing. It's like our portfolio value is also like continually climbing as well. And these are properties that I own free and clear. So right now I've got about 2.8 million in inventory that I just own free and clear. So as I sell those, I've get more cash to do more acquisitions and stuff. But I know coming at some point, the cash flow is probably not going to line up the way I want it to line up. And then I'll take on maybe a partner or something. But ideally, I just put something on my website a couple of weeks ago about that, I'm looking for private lenders. So, I'll pay them like 12% with a couple points probably. And then they could be secured by a first mortgage or trust deed on the particular property that we're buying, which is obviously way discounted from retail value. So I think it's pretty secure from their end. They make a good return as well. So I think that's probably the solution to to scaling once the cash flow becomes too uneven or something.
So you touched on something that is so important, and it's become one of my passions, is trying to impart to folks that are looking to get on the equity side. I know it took me a hell of a lot longer than it should have to have the confidence and the infrastructure to make that leap, and do it in a confident way. You had mentioned that there are some certain deals where you'll bring the land and someone else brings the capital. Folks, I've talked about this in the past. I hear all the time from people, they want to get involved in real estate, and they've got access to deals, and they are good networkers, and they understand how to put stuff together, but they don't have access to capital. They don't have access to cash. How could they get into the market if they don't have access to cash? If you have the deal, people will bring the money. I had that so twisted, Pete, for so long. I felt like, well, if you didn't have the money, then people wouldn't take you seriously. And if we're actually reading a book now, I'm not going to out the person that wrote it, but in book club, it talks about if someone's not putting their own cash into the deal, they're not serious, and you should move on. And listen, brother, if you've got the deal, you call me up any day of the week, Pete, and tell me you want us to put a couple of $100,000 in to flip a piece for a couple of $100,000 more. Yeah, sign me up all day long, right? And it doesn't take guys like us long to realize, well, you know what? Let's put that portal on the website where we'll pay someone 12 plus 2, right? Like that's a better deal.
Yeah.
We'll do it that way instead. But man, if you're out there, folks, and you're thinking about getting involved, or you have deals and money is what's stopping you, please get off your asses and get in the game. Do not let money be a barrier, because if you have the right deals, there are people lined up to fund your projects for you. Something that held me back for so long, and I just wanted to highlight that there. So Pete, let's talk about the process and talk about the website. So if there are folks out there that are thinking of selling, or they know someone who's thinking of selling, what do they do? How do they find you? What does that process look like? Do we have to upload surveys? Like, how far do we have to go here? What does this look
Well,
like?
if you got a piece of land, obviously, you can just email me. Best email would be reese@turningprofit.com. And, basically I just need to know the state, county, and parcel number, and I can take it all from there. And obviously, if we have questions, we can ask you about that type of thing too. I've got a website too, which is turningprofit.com, where if you're interested in kind of the land flipping business in itself, I do a monthly income report on there where each month I go into the details of our business, how much revenue we did, how much profit we did, each and every deal that we did, what we bought it for, what we sold it for, how many days we held it for, all kinds of notes about this property. So I've been doing that for a little over a year. And each and every month we do that, so you can kind of follow along the process and see kind of what's possible maybe within the business. And then, my wife and I have a podcast where we talk a lot about land flipping and other things as well. It's you can find it, links to it from that website, turningprofit.com. So
Is there, before I let you go, any advice you would give to folks out there that are thinking about getting into the land business?
yeah, I would focus first on the whole key is to be able to determine if a property, learn how to evaluate properties, and then learn how to determine is that property a deal or is it not a deal? Like at what price would it be a deal? So if you get really good at that part, which is really not that difficult, you just have to kind of follow a checklist of things. Everything opens up to you. You can identify deals, and you can get deals under contract. And if you don't have the resources, like you said, there's plenty of money out there to fund these deals. I'll fund your deal. I'll partner with you on them in most cases if it's a deal. So that's not that shouldn't be any sort of restriction for you at all. Like you get a deal, there's money for you. Like it's just out there. So yeah, learning how to evaluate properties is the big thing. So.
All right, Pete, well, give us that website one more time, please.
Sure. It's turningprofit.com. So, and also on there, I've got a link to a land flipping community that I just started in January. So we're really trying to build that up. We've got about 600 or 700 people in there right now, all the way from brand new investors, and we've got a bunch of experienced land investors in there as well. And I've been doing like this is all free stuff, and I've been doing like a weekly Zoom call where if you've got a deal, I'll go through and kind of evaluate the deal and kind of show you exactly on my screen how I break down how I evaluate property. So I think you'd learn a lot from that process.
That's awesome. So that's on the YouTube channel?
No, that's in my land flipping community, but you'll find the link for it, on turningprofit.com. So.
All right. And as always, all the links, folks, will be down below in the show notes. Pete Reese, Reelvest Properties, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate being here. So
best of luck on the growth, and I'm sure you're going to continue to smash. As always, everyone out there, please stay safe.